What if your soul's journey had nothing to do with religion, and everything to do with remembering who you were before the world told you who to be? What if Carl Jung, a man often labeled just a psychologist, actually saw something far deeper? Something about the soul's evolution that schools, churches, and even modern therapy never fully address. Because here's the truth. Jung didn't just explore the mind, he explored the psyche of the soul. And what he found might just shift the way you view your life, your struggles, and even your dreams. In this video, we're diving into Carl Jung's profound vision of the soul's journey. A vision rooted not in dogma or doctrine, but in lived experience, near-death revelation, and decades of inner exploration. We'll explore how Jung believed the soul doesn't simply go somewhere. After death, it moves through stages, faces, archetypal forces, and undergoes transformation that most people never realize is happening. Even now, you'll discover how your fears, your patterns, and even your dreams are not random. They're symbolic echoes of a deeper journey your soul has been on all along. And the most surprising part, these truths were never really hidden. They were simply never taught. So if you've ever felt like there's more to you than just your thoughts, if you've ever sensed that your life has a deeper rhythm, a symbolic language behind the chaos, then you're in the right place. Because Jung didn't just map the unconscious, he offered us a roadmap for the soul. When most people hear the word soul, they immediately think of religion. They imagine heaven and hell, angels and devils, rewards and punishments. They think of salvation as something external, something handed down by a higher power or earned through moral performance. But Carl Jung saw it differently. To Jung, the soul wasn't about religion. It wasn't about belief systems, doctrines, or even the afterlife in the traditional sense. The soul, he said, was the deepest layer of the human psyche, the essence of who we are, beneath the noise, the roles, the masks. And its journey, not upward toward heaven, but inward toward wholeness. Core 1. The soul as psychological reality. Carl Jung was a scientist, a psychiatrist, a thinker. But he was also a mystic in disguise, someone who believed that the most sacred truths weren't found in temples or texts, but in the hidden depths of the self. He believed that every human being contains within them a core self, something ancient, mysterious, and wise. A self that is far deeper than the ego, the personality, or the public identity we present to the world. To Jung, this self is the soul. And the journey of life isn't about escaping suffering or avoiding darkness. It's about integrating all parts of ourselves into something whole. That's the soul's true purpose. On Quest 2, individuation, the soul's real path. You've probably heard the word individuation before if you've explored Jung's work. But it's not just a fancy term, it's the very heart of his entire philosophy. Individuation is the soul's unfolding. The process of becoming your true self by facing, integrating, and reconciling all the parts of your unconscious, especially the ones you've denied, avoided, or disowned. It's not about becoming someone new. It's about becoming who you've always been, deep down. This journey doesn't follow a straight line. It doesn't come with a map, and no one can do it for you. But here's the beauty: the signs are always there if you're willing to pay attention. They show up in your relationships, your struggles, your triggers, your dreams. Your soul is constantly trying to speak to you, not in words, but in symbols, emotions, synchronicities, and archetypes. And the message is always the same. You are more than what you appear to be. Go deeper. Lukur Harbara 3, Beyond Heaven and Hell, a symbolic vision. Now here's where Jung's view really challenges traditional narratives. He didn't believe in a literal heaven or hell the way many religious systems describe them. Instead, he believed that heaven and hell are symbolic experiences, inner states of consciousness, not geographic locations. Heaven is the state of inner unity, of connection to the self, of living with purpose and alignment. Hell is disconnection, fragmentation, living from ego shadow fear. Think about it. Have you ever been surrounded by comfort and still felt miserable? Or gone through something difficult but felt deeply at peace inside? That's the difference Jung was pointing to. The soul's journey isn't about where you go after you die. It's about how you live while you're still here. For Umtal, the soul's journey through symbols and archetypes. Jung believed that the soul speaks to us through archetypes, universal symbols that appear in myths, dreams, and across all cultures. The hero, the shadow, the wise old man, the anima, the trickster. These aren't just stories. They're psychological maps, the language of the unconscious, helping guide us through the stages of inner transformation. So when you dream of falling or running from something or meeting a mysterious guide that's not random, that's your soul using archetypal imagery to get your attention. And if you've ever had a dream or experience that shook you to your core, that made you feel like something bigger was at play, that's your inner world trying to initiate you into the next phase of your journey. 5. Jung's experience. The soul beyond the body. What makes Jung's view so compelling is that it wasn't just theoretical. In 1944, after a heart attack, Jung had a near-death experience that transformed his understanding of the soul forever. He described leaving his body floating above the earth and approaching a radiant temple in space, a place that felt timeless and sacred. But just before he could enter, he was pulled back. He wasn't ready. His soul had more work to do. This wasn't a fantasy. It wasn't a metaphor. Jung believed it was a real glimpse into the symbolic structure of the soul's journey, one that transcends time, culture, and even physical existence. He later wrote that death is not an end, but a psychological transition. And the more you've integrated your soul in life, the more prepared you are to meet that transition with peace. 6. Why this matters today. In a world filled with surface-level answers, Jung's perspective is a lifeline. It reminds us that the meaning we're searching for out there is actually waiting inside us. That the pain we carry isn't just a problem, it's part of the path. That the darkness we fear isn't evil, it's misunderstood potential. And most importantly, that your soul is not something you have to earn, prove, or be saved from. It's something you're here to remember piece by piece through the work of inner transformation. So, if you've ever felt like your life is trying to tell you something, like your struggles have meaning, like your dreams carry messages, like there's more to you than what you've been taught to believe, you're right. That's not just intuition. That's your soul whispering through the noise. Carl Jung gave us a map not to escape reality, but to go deeper into it. To remember that within the human psyche lies something vast, sacred, and eternal. And that you, yes, you are already on that journey. The only question is, are you ready to walk it consciously? Have you ever had a dream so vivid, so strange, that you couldn't stop thinking about it the next day? Maybe there was someone chasing you, or you were standing in front of a locked door, or speaking to someone who felt familiar, but you couldn't quite name them. Most people dismiss dreams as random brain noise. But Carl Jung, he believed your dreams are one of the most honest languages your soul speaks. And not just dreams. Symbols, archetypes, spiritual encounters. the strange moments that feel like déjà vu, the characters who show up over and over in different forms, the events that shake your world and leave you wondering why now. Jung believed these weren't coincidences. They were signposts, messages from the unconscious guiding your soul through its own evolution. 1. The soul speaks through symbols, not words. Here's something Jung understood deeply. Your soul doesn't speak in plain language. It speaks in images, myths, dreams, and inner tension. Think about it. When you're lost, when you're going through a life transition, when something's trying to break through, do you receive a neat explanation? No. You get a recurring dream, a strange encounter, a feeling in your gut that something's off, or an obsession with a story, an image, or a symbol that just won't go away. That's your unconscious trying to speak. And according to Jung, if you learn to listen to these symbols, not just analyze them, but feel them, then you're stepping onto the path the soul has always been walking. Leader 2. Archetypes of the universal forces within you. Jung identified what he called archetypes, universal patterns that live in all of us. We don't invent them, we inherit them. They're the same across cultures, religions, and time. You see them in mythology, in dreams, in movies, in your life story. The wise old man, the wounded child, the shadow, the divine feminine, the trickster, the hero. These archetypes aren't just characters, they're stages of inner development. Each one represents a challenge, a part of the self you must face, understand, and integrate. Jung believed that as the soul evolves, it doesn't just grow, it moves through these archetypal energies. And every archetype comes with its own trial. 3. The 3 major archetypal trials of the soul. Let's explore the 3 main symbolic trials Jung believed nearly every soul must face to grow. Baba the Guide, meeting inner wisdom. The first is the guide, sometimes called the mentor or inner teacher. This archetype appears when the ego is overwhelmed or lost, and the unconscious offers help. The guide might show up in a dream as a wise old man, a mystical animal, or a stranger with strange but powerful advice. In waking life, it may appear as synchronicity, a book that finds you, a phrase that hits too deeply to be random, a person who shows up just when you're on the edge of a decision. The message of the guide is clear. There's more inside you than you've dared to explore. Trust it. But the guide can't walk the path for you. They only point. You have to take the step. Chapter, the shadow. Facing what you fear in yourself, then comes the one most people avoid. The shadow. This is the part of you that contains all the things you don't want to see, your insecurities, fears, anger, shame, jealousy, and trauma. But here's the twist, it also contains your power, your creativity, your authentic voice. Jung believed the shadow is not evil. It's repressed potential. And it doesn't go away if you ignore it. It shows up in your projections, in your relationships, in your emotional triggers. Ever found yourself judging someone, only to realize that they remind you of a part of yourself you've disowned? That's the shadow asking to be seen. Jung said, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate. So how do you face the shadow? You stop running. You sit with discomfort. You ask the hardest questions. What am I avoiding? What truth about myself have I refused to acknowledge? And slowly you begin to reclaim yourself, not just the good parts, but all of you. See death. The ego must die before the soul awakens. The 3rd major archetype is death, not literal death, but symbolic death. This is the ending of who you thought you were. The collapse of an identity, a belief, a version of life that no longer fits. Maybe it's the end of a relationship. Maybe it's losing your job or leaving your old self behind. Maybe it's a dark night of the soul. In Jungian psychology, this is necessary. The soul cannot evolve while the ego clings to control. Something has to die for something new to be born. And these deaths are sacred, they mark a turning point. When you surrender to them, you begin to tap into a truth deeper than identity. You start to remember the self beneath all the roles. Like 4, are these just symbols or something more? Some people hear all this and think, okay, cool metaphors. But is any of it real? Here's the thing. Jung wasn't trying to convince you these symbols are literal. He believed that symbolic truth is often more real than literal fact. You don't have to believe a dream character actually exists in the outer world. What matters is what it evokes in you, what it reveals, what it transforms. Symbolic trials aren't ideas, they're experiences. And when you live through them, when you feel them in your body and psyche, you'll know this is the language of the soul. 5. This is a journey. You're already on the most important thing, and you don't have to start this journey. You're already on it. The question is that are you walking it unconsciously, being tossed around by dreams, emotions, and patterns you don't understand? Or are you waking up to the path and beginning to walk it with awareness? Every challenge in your life has meaning. Every pattern you repeat is a symbol trying to be integrated. Every moment of silence is a doorway, if you're willing to listen. The guide, the shadow, the death and rebirth. They're not just stories. They are your story happening from the inside out. Archetypes, so the next time you have a strange dream, the next time a symbol keeps showing up in your life, the next time something ends before you're ready, pause. Ask yourself, what is my soul trying to show me here? What part of me am I being invited to meet? Because as Jung taught us, when you stop running from your symbols and start listening to them, you don't just interpret your life. Let me ask you something personal. Have you ever felt like you keep ending up in the same place no matter how many changes you try to make? You switch jobs, change partners, move cities, redecorate your life. But deep down, something feels stuck. That's not coincidence. It's not bad luck. Carl Jung would say, your soul is caught in a loop, and that loop will keep repeating until you face the one thing you keep running from your shadow. 1. The repeating loop of the soul. Jung didn't believe the soul grows in a straight line. He saw it more like a spiral. You circle the same wounds, the same lessons again and again, until you finally face them. And if you don't grow. You just loop over and over. Different faces, different chapters, but the same unhealed story underneath. He called this neurosis a symptom of a soul that's blocked. Not because it's broken, but because it's been denied. And the blockage, it's often the part of yourself you've buried for years. 2. What is the shadow, really? So what exactly is the shadow? It's not evil. It's not demonic. It's unseen truth. It's the parts of yourself that you've rejected, denied, or never been allowed to feel. The anger you were punished for as a kid. The tears you were told to hide. The dreams you abandoned to survive. And it's not just negative traits. It can be your power, your sensuality, your voice, your confidence, all shoved into the dark because someone told you it wasn't acceptable. But here's the problem. What we bury doesn't disappear. It waits. It acts out from the basement. It becomes projection addiction, anxiety, emptiness. Until one day, your soul says enough. Chapter 3. Why avoiding your shadow keeps you stuck. Let's say you've never learned to express anger. Maybe growing up anger meant punishment. So now as an adult, you avoid conflict at all costs. You smile when you're hurt. You nod when you're betrayed. You walk away when you should speak up. From the outside, it looks like you're kind. But inside, your soul is starving. Every time you swallow the truth, you reinforce the belief that your real feelings don't matter. That you don't matter. And slowly, something begins to die inside. Not physically. Spiritually. You start to feel hollow. Disconnected. Like you're just playing a role. That is the cost of avoiding your shadow. Not only does it block growth, it blocks your aliveness. 4. The soul repeats until it learns. You might be wondering if the shadow is so painful. Why does the soul keep returning to it? Because pain isn't the enemy. Avoidance is. The unconscious keeps bringing the lesson back through dreams, relationships, breakdowns, not to hurt you, but to wake you up. Because until you look it in the eye, you can't integrate it. And until you integrate it, you stay fragmented. Jung believed that true healing, true transformation, only happens when the conscious self embraces the unconscious. When we stop judging our wounds and start listening to them. That's where growth begins. 5. What happens when you finally face it? When you stop avoiding and finally face your shadow, something shifts. You cry the tears you never let fall. You say the words you thought no one could hear. You admit to yourself the truth you've carried for decades. And in that honesty, you feel something else emerge, freedom. Not the loud kind, not fireworks, but a quiet, powerful kind of release. You begin to reclaim your energy. You speak differently. You breathe differently. You stop apologizing for existing. This is what Jung called individuation, the process of becoming whole by embracing all parts of yourself. Not just the light, but the dark too. The 6. Real-life example. The emotionally numb soul. Let's take a real-world example. Imagine someone who avoids sadness at all costs. Maybe their childhood taught them that crying was weak. Maybe they had to be strong for others. So now anytime sadness shows up, they run. They numb it with work, with perfection, with distraction. But underneath their soul is drowning. They might seem put together, but they feel disconnected from relationships. They can't access joy. They feel stuck creatively, emotionally, spiritually. That's the shadow at work. Not because it wants to ruin you, but because it's begging to be integrated. When that person finally allows themselves to grieve, to break down, to admit they're not okay, that's not weakness. That's the beginning of wholeness. 7. This is the soul's true path, and the world often tells us to fix ourselves, to get over it, to move on. But Jung's wisdom flips that. He says, don't move on, move in. Move into the shadow, into the wound, into the places you've been too afraid to go. Because that's where your power is buried. That's where your real self is waiting. The soul doesn't evolve through perfection. It evolves through integration. Some final thought. So if you feel stuck, if you keep hitting the same wall, if your life feels like a pattern on repeat, don't ask what's wrong with me. Ask what part of me have I abandoned, because as Jung taught us, the soul cannot evolve until the shadow is seen. And the moment you see it, really see it, You begin to write a new story, one that doesn't loop, but finally leads forward. What if everything you've been searching for, peace, clarity, purpose, was never something to gain, but something to remember? Carl Jung believed the soul isn't on a mission to become something new. It's on a mission to return to who it truly is beneath all the noise masks and fears we've inherited from the world. And this return, this remembering, is what Jung called awakening. Naker Orferanda, Waska, the true goal. Wholeness, not perfection. Jung didn't believe life was about achieving perfection or becoming some enlightened figure untouched by struggle. He believed the goal was integration, to unify the fragmented parts of ourselves. The ego, the soul, the unconscious, the conscious mind. When these align, when we stop fighting ourselves internally, that's when something remarkable happens. We begin to live in a state of wholeness. We no longer feel split, like one version of ourselves at work, another in relationships, and yet another when no one's watching. Instead, we move from a centered place, a place that feels real. Dog living is awake, not asleep. So what does it mean to live awake? Jung said, most people walk through life asleep, reacting, projecting, blaming, grasping, without ever questioning who is actually steering their choices. But when the soul awakens, we no longer live on autopilot. We begin to notice our thoughts. We pause before reacting. We recognize when our ego is trying to protect us, and when our soul is trying to guide us. And slowly we begin to feel a deeper connection, not just with ourselves, but with life itself. Colors seem brighter. Conversations feel more meaningful. Even pain becomes a teacher, not an enemy. But this awakening is not a lightning bolt. Now, let's be clear. Awakening isn't usually some mystical flash of light that changes everything overnight. It's subtle. It's the moment you choose truth over comfort. It's when you stop blaming the world and start asking, what is life trying to show me here? It's when you sit with your pain instead of running from it, because you finally trust that it's not there to punish you, but to reveal you. And yes, sometimes it's messy. Sometimes it hurts, but on the other side of that discomfort is clarity. You begin to remember that you're not just a name, a role, a job, a body. You're something deeper. Your consciousness itself having a human experience. That the soul's compass returns. Jung often spoke about how modern people feel lost, not because the world is confusing, but because they've lost connection with their inner compass. And that compass is the soul. When we reconnect with it through silence, reflection, dreams, art, nature, we begin to trust life again. We don't need to control everything. We start listening more than forcing. We become more curious than afraid. And in that shift, the world changes. Not because the external world changes, but because we do. To the depth most people never touch. Here's something profound Jung once suggested. The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are, not who your parents expected, not who your society rewards, not who your trauma shaped, but your authentic, integrated, awakened self. That's the soul's destination. And most people will never reach it because they never stop long enough to ask, who am I really beneath the noise? What awakening feels like. So if you're wondering what this awakening feels like, imagine this. You're no longer controlled by fear, but guided by purpose. You don't chase validation, you rest in self-worth. You no longer ask life to make you happy. You meet life as you are and find joy in presence. You start seeing beauty where you once saw boredom. You hear messages in your dreams. You forgive not for others, but to release yourself. You don't become perfect. You become real. High to the path forward. Jung's message was never to escape the world. It was to go deeper into yourself, so that when you return to the world, you bring light, not projection. He believed that awakening isn't an escape. It's the beginning of conscious living. And perhaps that's the very reason you're watching this video. Because something inside you is stirring, a memory, a knowing, a whisper from the soul saying, you're not here to sleepwalk through life. You're here to wake up fully. So what if the soul's journey was never a myth, but a map Carl Jung tried to draw, not with dogma, but with symbols, dreams, and the raw experiences of being human. He didn't hand us a rule book. He handed us a mirror. And in that mirror, we're invited to look deeper, not out into the cosmos, but inward, into the terrain of our own unconscious. The truth is, your soul's evolution doesn't begin in some distant afterlife. It begins in how you face your fears, in how you listen to your dreams, in how you respond when life whispers or screams at you to wake up. Every emotion, every shadow, every strange coincidence might just be a breadcrumb, leading you home. So let me ask you, have you ever had a dream or a moment that made you question the direction of your soul? What part of your inner world have you left unexplored or forgotten? Drop your reflections in the comments. I read everyone. And if this journey speaks to you, if you feel called to explore more of Jung's powerful insights, the soul's hidden language, and the symbols most people ignore, make sure to subscribe and turn on the bell. There's a whole world within you, and this channel is here to help you remember. You're not just watching a video. You're stepping back into yourself. See you in the next one.